I invited a few friends over for dinner, and somehow Karen turned it into a police emergency. It was supposed to be simple, nothing crazy, just a few friends coming over, some food, maybe a little music, and finally a break from work. You know, normal human behavior, which, in an HOA neighborhood, is already risky. By 7 p.m., my driveway had 2 cars. Not 10, not a concert, 2. And one more parked neatly along the curb in front of my house. Again, my house. That's when I felt it. That strange sensation, like something was watching me. I looked across the street, and there she was, Karen, standing at her window, holding her phone, already concerned for public safety. Now here's the thing about Karen. She doesn't approach immediately. No. First comes surveillance. She watched as my friends got out of their cars. She watched as we laughed. She watched as we carried food inside. At one point, I swear, she zoomed in like she was filming a documentary. Here we see social interaction in its unnatural habitat. My friend Jake leaned over and whispered, "Why is that lady recording us?" I sighed. "That's not a lady," I said. "That's a situation." About 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened it. And there she was, Karen, standing like she had been summoned by a disturbance in the force. "Good evening," she said. And listen, nobody who says good evening like that has ever meant it. I smiled. "Hey, Karen." She didn't smile back. Her eyes moved past me, scanning the house like she was counting civilians. "You have guests," she said. I nodded. "Yeah." She took a deep breath and delivered her first dramatic one-liner. "This level of activity has not been approved by the community guidelines. Approved for having friends in my house." I tried to keep things calm. "They're just visiting." But Karen raised a finger like she was about to rewrite the Constitution. "Guest frequency," she declared, "must remain within reasonable limits to preserve neighborhood tranquility." I blinked. "How many guests is too many?" She didn't hesitate. "More than this. Very specific, very scientific." Then she pointed outside. "Ah, here we go." "Vehicles," she said dramatically, "are accumulating." Accumulating, like a storm system. I looked out. 3 cars, total. If that's accumulation, a grocery store parking lot is a crisis zone. "They're parked legally," I said. She shook her head slowly. "Legal," she whispered, "is not the same as acceptable. There it is, the HOA philosophy." She leaned slightly closer and delivered the line. "If this gathering continues," she warned, "I will be forced to escalate the situation." Escalate? For dinner. I nodded. "Karen, it's just friends?" She smiled. Not a happy smile. "A this will end badly for you smile." "We'll see," she said, and she walked away. I went back inside, tried to ignore it. We laughed, ate food, put on some music, normal, peaceful, for about 15 minutes. Then my friend Sarah looked out the window and said, Why is there a police car outside?" Of course there was. I stepped outside, and there it was, a patrol car. Lights off, but very real. The officer stepped out and asked the question I was getting very familiar with. "Sir, we received a complaint." I nodded. "Let me guess. Karen?" He didn't confirm it, but he didn't have to. Right on cue, Karen appeared, walking fast, phone in hand, energy at maximum. "Officer," she said dramatically, "this residence is hosting an unauthorized gathering." Unauthorized, like we were planning a heist. The officer looked at me, then at the house, then back at her. "How many people?" he asked. Karen answered immediately. "Too many." The officer asked me, "Sir, how many guests do you have?" I thought about it. 5, Karen gasped. 6, if you count the disruption. Disruption. That was me. Apparently. The officer stood there, clearly trying to understand how 5 people eating dinner had turned into a police call. He looked at me. Sir, is there any disturbance? I shook my head. No. He turned to Karen. She stepped forward like she'd been waiting her entire life for this moment. There is excessive social activity, she declared dramatically, which is creating an atmosphere of unpredictability. Unpredictability. We were eating pasta. Karen pointed toward my house. Multiple vehicles, she continued. Multiple voices and an unregulated gathering pattern. Unregulated gathering pattern. That's what she called friends. The officer blinked slowly. Ma'am, that's not illegal. Karen looked personally offended. So you're saying residents can just invite people whenever they want? Yes. That is exactly what he was saying. At this point, my friends started coming outside. Now we had witnesses. Jake leaned next to me and whispered, "Is this really happening?" I nodded. "Welcome to the neighborhood." Karen saw them and immediately escalated. "You see," she said loudly, "the crowd is growing. Growing." We went from 5 to still 5. The officer took a deep breath and said, "Ma'am, people are allowed to have guests." Karen crossed her arms. "Not like this." He paused. "What does like this mean?" She didn't hesitate. This level of comfort is disruptive to community expectations. Comfort. We were too comfortable. Karen pointed at my house like it was a crime scene. "I want this gathering shut down," she demanded. The officer stared at her. "Ma'am, there is nothing to shut down." That should have been the end. But Karen doesn't end things. She escalates them. Karen delivered her final dramatic one-liner to the officer. "If you refuse to act," she said, "then you are enabling disorder." Enabling disorder. He nodded slowly, then said the most devastating sentence of the night. "Ma'am, I'm going to leave." And just like that, the police exited the storyline. Karen did not. 2 days later, I got the letter. HOA violation notice. Excessive guest activity. Parking congestion. Noise concerns. Noise concerns? We were quieter than a library. Then I saw the fine, $500, for having friends. I laughed so hard I had to sit down, because I knew exactly where this was going. The meeting room was full. Board members at the table, neighbors watching like it was live TV, and Karen, front row, ready, confident, absolutely certain she was about to win. The president began. "We're here regarding a complaint about excessive guest activity." Karen stood immediately. She walked forward and delivered her masterpiece. "This resident," she said dramatically, "has turned his home into a hub of uncontrolled social interaction." Uncontrolled. "We had snacks," she continued. "Vehicles were everywhere, voices were present, and the atmosphere was unstable." Unstable. Because people were laughing. I stood up calmly. "No noise complaints," I said. "No blocked driveways. No violations of city law." Then I added the finishing line. "I had 5 guests." Silence. One board member leaned forward. "5?" I nodded. "Yes." Karen looked like she had just been betrayed by math. The president adjusted his glasses. "Having guests is not a violation." Boom. Karen froze. "But it was excessive," she argued. The president asked, "How many guests would be acceptable?" She hesitated. "Less." Very precise. Karen stood up again and said, "If this continues, this neighborhood will lose its structure." Structure. From dinner. The room went quiet. Then one board member whispered, "We can't regulate friendships." That line hit hard. "The fine is dismissed," the president announced, and residents are allowed to host guests within reasonable limits. He paused, then added the real message. This situation did not require police involvement. Direct hit. Karen.exe stopped responding. That weekend, I invited my friends again. Same number, same parking, same laughter, across the street. Karen closed her blinds, and that's when I realized something. In an HOA neighborhood, the real disturbance is thinking you can control other people's lives